So, welcome everyone to our webinar today. It's 1:03 CET. People are still joining, but who's late? We'll jump right into the action. Let's get right to the show, guys. We're gonna talk about D365 today, about our Project Academy, of course. That's gonna be the core point, and we're gonna talk about typical failures, typical problems everybody in the D365 space is facing, especially as a consultant, and how we can fix that in the future. This is a project-based, experience-based approach that should be highly different to what you guys know on any kind of marketing from Microsoft directly or any YouTube tutorials, Udemy or whatsoever. This is hands-on, many years of experience and how we can do that in a blueprinted, templated, standard approach. But before we dive into that topic, welcome everyone. I'm Patrick. I'm going to introduce myself in the next slides for the ones who don't know me. I got Zlatko on board, who's also going to introduce himself, of course. And we got a lot of people in the background who have been working, setting everything up, preparing the show today. So thanks for everyone, especially Maria, who has helped to create these incredible, nice slides. So enough talking, let's dive right into the action. I'm Patrick. You got a couple of key facts here. I'm not gonna read that out loud, but how we tend to do things, we're gonna loosen the typical webinars who are typically very boring and we're just reading off the slide. We're going to do it a bit differently for the ones who have seen the last webinar. Maybe a couple of things about myself. I'm in the D365 space for a couple of days/years myself. I've co-founded a company in the last years and exited that after a couple of years. It's all named there. A couple of other business ventures in the IT sphere that you can read here besides the D365 Project Academy. I have roughly 15 years of experience, a little bit more in the IT sphere, mostly in the SAP and also obviously in the D365 area. Scaled my last company to almost 100 people, over 250 projects combined overall, let's say over the whole timeline that I've been into that sphere. So I would say that I have seen the one or the other thing when it comes to sales or CRM projects or ERP projects or BI projects. Why are we doing this today? That's the core question, because after literally hundreds of projects, one pattern is obvious. Consultants, especially D365 consultants, they don't fail because they lack some kind of intelligence or information. It's usually the lack of project context, and that's the pain point that we want to tackle. We want to fix that today, and that's why we are here. A couple of side private facts, whoever is interested, put a nice slide here and a nice picture of me and my family here. But enough about me. I'll give the word to Mr. Slatko.
Thank you, Patrick. So my name is Zlatko. I have been into the Dynamics family and sales and pre-sales for many years, but actively as a consultant for the past 10-ish years now. I'm an owner of my own company nowadays. We do Dynamics 365 and Power Platform solution implementations. And yeah, thank you for the invitation, Patrick.
My pleasure. So combined, we have a couple of years / decades of D365 experience here on board today. And that's what we want to illustrate and obviously also bring to you within this webinar. Let's jump right into the agenda, guys. We differentiated a couple of highlights that we want to go through today. We call it the market illusion, because the illusion is that what basically the market is selling. Then we go deep into how real projects actually function. So this is typically not about how D365 is working as a system or standard software. It's really about the project context. We're going to analyze what separates juniors from senior consultants. Then we'll share a couple of real project cases, use cases. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. Finally, we will also talk about the structured solution. And obviously, we'll give you some room about your question or for your questions, and we'll try to give some answers, obviously. And again, this is practical. We don't want to do theoretical talk. You have massive overload of that information everywhere, and that's the point. Who's this for? The session works basically on 3 levels. If you're a junior, you'll understand what to focus on immediately if you start a D365 project. If you're mid-level, maybe you're stuck, maybe you'll see what's missing. If you're a senior, you get a clean structure that you can basically apply in your own terms, in your own project. It also goes from very standard, basic experience to people or even companies who are in the space and know what they're doing, but maybe lack a standard approach. Dive right into the first section, call it the market illusion. And guys and girls, you can scan a code here. This is our form. Whoever is interested to know a little bit more, you can fill out a couple of fields and we'll contact you if you want to do that, give you more information. You have a couple of chances to scan this code, but again, this is information for you. If you are in that field, you're interested to hear more, how we're approaching that, obviously after the webinar or during, just type in a couple of words and that's it. The market net. The market story sounds simple. That's the key point. You learn dynamics, you do certifications, the demand is high, salaries or revenues are quite strong, it's all true, but it's incomplete because the real difficulty begins when you actually enter a live project. That's the challenge here. And that's the reality. And I think, Slatko, you want to jump in here.
Yeah, that's the reality in general. The general opinion of the people is I'm going to jump into this technology. I will take some certification, but certification does not mean that you're already ready to for some implementation of a project. Then you face the real problems. Just having the certificate is not that you already know everything, right? And also when you're demoing the tool, right, the Dynamics 365 app, it's one thing to demo it and demo the features that are already present out of the box, but it's way different when you start some implementation and deployment on a client side. Then you face the real problems. Then you face with the requests, the illusion of the customer, etc., etc. And also one point is very important that during those implementations of projects, during those projects which can last for years or maybe some are shorter, it's one thing when your key users start testing the developments on the sandbox, and those are key users, those are just several people that you have or the company have picked for to be the key users during the implementation. It's way different when the project goes live and mass use starts of the users within the company. Then you get a lot of questions, a lot of requests, every time there is something that is missing or wrong because the key user didn't understood the full story of the process.
No, it's absolutely right. How Zlatko is saying, in real project, you face the stakeholder management, budget pressure, time pressure. You have political, strategical tensions, data chaos, governance requirements, and that's the point. No exam prepares you for these kind of things, because that's not a technical approach. It also leads to the point why consultants, where there is plateaus that exist. Plateau in that sense means it can mean you execute tickets, you wait for tasks, you avoid customer conversations, you don't challenge unclear requirements. And that's basically how projects can stagnate. You have, as it says here, it's about process context, it's about architecture, it's about ownership of data, of processes, in projects. It's about taking responsibility and also drive decision making, which we probably all know in projects can be a major obstacle. And project growth starts when you, as a consultant or consultancy, understand or start to understand this context that a project is not merely a technical or an IT project. There's a lot of other factors that play a major role in that. Let's take a look into real D365 projects, how they work. And again, here's a barcode that you can scan. If you have any other questions that we cannot clarify during the webinar, feel free to scan, send us the questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. Let's walk through a real life or real project flow. How can that look? We usually start at the pre-sales stage, that maybe the scope is defined, maybe not so much yet. Assumptions are made on both sides, promises are created, requirements maybe are defined, estimations are being done. Let's leave it there. Then comes the analysis phase. Some workshops, we have surprisingly conflicting requirements, maybe and most likely different departments want different things. They have different KPIs. A finance controlling department maybe has a different KPI than the sales department. You have different stakeholders, key users. Then comes the design phase. Here, you can say there's a standard versus the customization decision. We are working in a standard software field, so you hear the saying that be as close as to the standard as possible, but there's going to be trade-offs. There's going to be maybe some risk decisions. Typically, you can also say it's a fit gap phase that we're in at this stage. In the build stage, for example, you then do the configuration, the development, the integrations, and that's typical of the technical approach. In the UAT phase, you have edge cases, you have maybe scope creep that comes up. So different stakeholders, different key users jump in, so the edge or the scope explodes. Also, data exposes as weaknesses at this stage. In the cutover phase, for example, it's about the exact timing. Reconciliation is a buzzword that flows around many times. You also have risk management. Cut over in a project is usually a very critical phase. Go live, I think that's pretty simple. Here comes into play the real accountability, the production reality when you go live. And after that, typically is a hypercare phase, what users actually do versus, or how they are actually using the system versus what was designed. And obviously in the hypercare phase, you don't want to deal with all the previous questions, but the reality looks a bit different every now and then. If you understand the structure, you already start thinking like a senior or someone who is more experienced, because the project especially a D365 sales project, is not just about the technical implementation. What is the difference between SMEs and enterprise projects, especially in the Dynamics world? In SMEs and SME projects, decisions are a bit faster. In enterprise projects, you have challenges, let's put it like this, like compliance that matters, security that matters, auditability, maybe other stakeholders, investors that need to be involved. If it's a bigger corporation that's highly likable. Enterprise projects require governance thinking. SMEs a little bit faster, more hands-on approach, quicker decision making, you can say. But the key point here is if you understand both environments, because sales projects or CRM projects can be done in both worlds, you become versatile and more valuable towards the client, because obviously in both worlds there's a little bit of a different approach. Most projects, they fail, or most projects failures are not product failures when it comes to the system or the sales app, the CRM app. They're clarity failures, you can put it like this. The examples can be weak documentation, unclear object ownership, process ownership, data ownership, customization without long-term thinking when you bring the standard approach into play, no governance over the whole system. And consulting here helps to create clarity. And this is the core point here. We are working with humans, even if we're doing IT projects, and you need to involve the right parties to the right time when you set up a sales or a CRM project. So it's not just about implementing from a technical point of view. Real good, real professional consultancy includes the decision making, the experience, the expertise of each stakeholder, of each key users, of maybe also different departments depending on how big that project or maybe even program on a client side is. So that's really a project failure, these points that we were just summarizing. So it's really clear and really important to have an overall, let's say, structure on how to involve all these points and also persons or stakeholders. The architecture is a very important point as well. Obviously, even juniors must understand certain system boundaries. Questions here: who owns the customer master data? Where does pricing logic go live? Is integration synchronous or asynchronous? How does reporting consolidate data? Architecture awareness builds credibility instantly, especially if you have a CRM that's combined with an ERP project. You find that many times. That's not just a sales system is implemented. Maybe it's part of a bigger program where an ERP is rolled out. So these points like integration, data migration, reporting, security and environment plays a major role. Furthermore, when it comes to data migration, it's never just a technical point. It forces business decisions. That's very important. Who owns the definition of a customer, of a business partner, of a client, of a contact? What historical data is relevant? How do we reconcile balances when it comes also in the context of ERP, not just the sales or CRM? Who signs off data correctness? If you can manage these conversations, you can make the step from being, let's say, more of a junior approach to a senior approach when it comes to the consulting behind that. Integration was another point, and integration in that context is its complexity is usually underestimated. who's the system of record, who's the leading system? Again, also in comparison, if you have an ERP. What happens when the CRM updates a customer contact and ERP updates a customer? Who's the leading system? What is real time? What is batch? How does reporting consolidate conflicting data or data sets? Core point here is strong consultants understand the risk layers before the problem occurs. Brings us to the standard approach, because we use standard software. There should be a standard approach. Very important. By the way, guys, if there's questions in the chat, use the Q&A function. You can also throw in your questions during the webinar. Maybe it fits right now to the current topic. Otherwise, we're going to tackle the questions at the end. If there's a question, please let me know, read it out loud, someone, because I can't see the chat right now. All right, let's get to some real use cases. And again, there's a barcode. If you have any other questions, feel free to scan, contact us, throw us with your questions. We're happy to answer them. Here's one client case that we dealt with in the recent past, so to say. International Compass is a real estate company, which is a very interesting setup because there's very strong investors on board, as you can read here on the slide. Pretty big ones, maybe the biggest or one of the biggest ones in the world. Typical, or in that case, typical challenges that we were facing. You had multiple entities, strong finance requirements, investor oversight, obviously strong KPIs, governance requirements. And the success factor, and today this was a sales and ERP project. The success factor wasn't just configuration, a technical configuration. It was aligning the operating model first, then translating it into the system design. You can also say, in even other words, secondly, it's an IT project in that scope. Firstly, it's a requirement and change project. And obviously here, ERP is or was the leading system, and the sales system was the secondary system. Anyways, it was feeding partially the ERP system, obviously, when it comes to leads, opportunities, projects, quotes later on that went into the ERP, but obviously on the ERP side, you had all the finance data that comes out of that. Another real use case is energy company, which is located in Germany, quite big one. We did here the full service D365 sales implementation, later on also full outsourcing. So that means that we took over the whole D365 department, so to say, and ran it for the client. And typical challenges that we had here, the CRM, it failed when definitions were unclear. What is a qualified opportunity? Who owns the account? When is a deal forecasted, or how is a deal forecasted? The technology worked, but the key point here is that the process clarity is the point that created the success. It's about ownership. It's about the governance of the whole process. CRM is a success, but it can only be a success if you take a look at the whole customer journey in this case, because it's not merely a simple IT project or process. When you just look at the sales part, you need to look what's happening before, what's happening behind, include all the key players, the stakeholders, again, and that's pretty important point. Not just an IT project, goes for basically all projects, and that's something that you can really write down. It's basically always first the requirements, the KPIs for the client, the change management, the stakeholder management. In the sales context, important. In ERP context, if we're looking a little bit wider, even more important. This is a case about a soccer club in Germany. Fun fact, besides, there's many soccer clubs in the whole wide world that are using Microsoft, not only MS 365, but D365 or Business Central. There's even, I said that's a fun fact, there's even Business Central created products that are designed for soccer clubs. Didn't know that till that point, which makes it even more interesting, because if you want to position yourself into that sphere, there's a higher chance that whatever you're dealing there is a problem in many other soccer clubs or in the sports industry field. It's a niche itself. In this case, obviously in a sports environment, pressure is pretty high. CRM only works, in this case, when the leadership again is defined, ownership, rules, discipline. CRM becomes the revenue backbone of this organization, of each organization, when the leadership also commits to the project. So in this case, we introduced Sales, D365 Sales. It was about the commercial scaling. And the fun fact I already mentioned, looking at the slide, really a lot of clubs, almost all clubs are using Microsoft or SAP. SAP also has, as I said, it's a fun fact beside, they also have a soccer SAP system, same as on the Microsoft side. So again, they're competitors. And I know in Germany, for example, the majority is using Microsoft, either D365, which is then a customized solution. On Business Central side, there's an actual product on BC that was designed. And a lot of soccer clubs are using Power BI, and these days also Fabric to report on that data. And yeah, they're using even more dedicated data to analyze, for example, also the skills, all the data that comes out of the games, out of the trainings. There's specific sports management software that's basically implemented in all kinds of sport. It's a huge range, obviously super interesting who is interested in soccer, but let's not dive too deep into that one. Just give you an example of different use cases. You have energy sector, you have real estate sector, you have a sports sector. Giving over to Zlatko, he has another good use case to present.
Can you hear me, Patrick? Sorry,
Yeah.
my internet dropped. I had to switch to my phone, and a lot of complications, but I cannot turn my camera on now. So hopefully everybody can hear me. It was just an experience that I wanted to share from one of the implementations that I have worked on. So it was Dynamics 365 for sales implementation, which included several integrations with other systems. So the company in this case thought that the more key users that they will involve, the project will be better and it will go more smoothly. We were struggling with the number of the key users, which were, I don't know, maybe around 25 at the moment when we start. We tried to push the idea to the customer that this is not the right way. We have to find a more appropriate way and only select several key users that will help us in the process of requirement gathering. So yeah, sometimes consultants need to be aware to identify the right people that can be key users. It's not everybody that can be key user from a customer side, and then you have to clearly understand their requirements. You should put yourself on their level, on their understanding of the systems and on the processes, and try to guide them to to get the right information on how and what they want to gain from the system, right? So this is as a key point from my side that I wanted to share, that you need to be able to also identify the key users, because wrong key users can guide you on a different path, and then that's not the right approach.
Absolutely. Here, that's a section about the real a couple of use cases. Again, if somebody has a question about the use cases, feel free to ask or write them now. We have some time afterwards dedicated that we can go through those questions too. But if there's no questions, let's continue the journey. Section 4 is about what makes you valuable. Again, there's the form. If you have anything that you want to ask or share that you don't want to ask or share within the presentation. These 5 capabilities, from our experience, separate seniors from juniors. Process thinking, we had that on the map. A structured communicational approach, understanding the customer's requirements and translating them into technical requirements, business to technical requirements, a core skill that you should be able to learn. Risk awareness, obviously, within the whole project, program, customer contacts, decision clarity, being able to make, or in some cases, obviously, you can not make the decisions, but you can enable decision making for the clients. And very important here, consultants translate business into system logic and reduce the risk. It's not just about I'll do task or implementation, customization, development A, and then I'll do B. I'll just wait on a silver tablet. That's more the technical approach. If you really want to strive as a consultant and really get deep into that in that field and really want to separate yourself from others, it's about understanding, it's about consulting and not just the technical implementation.
As if I may jump in here, Patrick, for a second. I always say the system is very we have the right to accommodate the system to the business process of the client, but somewhere in some situation the client needs to accommodate to the system as well. So you need, as a consultant, to be very aware what the system possibilities are, but also where you need to draw a line and then maybe make a change on the customer process as well. Not all customer processes are well designed and go smoothly, right?
Absolutely. That's a super important point, especially because we are within the standard software approach as a CRM D365 system is. Not all customer requirements make sense or align with the standard. And if you want to, or if the client really needs a customized or even developed process, it really needs to, like, you need to be able to draw out the consequences or risks if you really go down that path. It doesn't mean it's wrong per se, can have technical or also functional consequences later on in the project. There is a question from Natalie. I think it just dropped in. I can see the chat now. If you find you have the wrong key users, how do you find the correct ones while also not having a negative impact on moral or buy-in with those that have been rejected as a key user? Let me think. Well, it depends what your role in the project is at first, right? If you are a project manager for the CRM, for the sales project, it's part of your responsibilities to pick the right key users with the client. Typically, it can be, of course, it can happen that not all key users are on board, or maybe wrong key users have been picked. That's why usually in more complex projects, such as the ones we are talking about, you drive first a POC or pilot in order to reduce those risks, such as having wrong key users on board, or maybe not involving all necessary stakeholders. It depends on your role. If you're making, or if you're enabling the client to pick the right ones, the pilot phase could be, or POC phase could be a good approach. If you're a consultant and maybe see that key users are lacked or are not being involved, or the right key users are not being involved, or simply say, raise your hand and communicate your concern. We had communication as a very important skill. So raise your hand and make it visible, make it transparent. Hope that.
As a consultant, within time, you will be able to more clearly identify who is suitable for that role and who is not, in my opinion. But even at the very beginnings, when you don't have when you still haven't developed those skills, the moment that you realize that the key user is not appropriate for this role, in that moment you should react immediately and raise that question, right? Otherwise, the whole project might go in the wrong direction. Now, how do you politely say that so that you don't offend anybody? That's soft skills already, right? Maybe you speak with the project manager, maybe with I don't know, the bosses of those people. But in general, it's not an easy skill, definitely. And the faster you react on those potential issues, the less the project will have issues on long term, right?
Agreed. Natalie says that makes sense. Thank you. You're welcome. We're gonna move forward. So what do seniors actually do differently? Simply speaking, seniors reduce chaos. They think beyond features, technical features, or other words, the technical implementation. They understand the business or the commercial impact that this project or this process or this requirement have. They challenge certain assumptions. They, as I already said, they understand different kinds of aspects of impact. They understand the whole project scope, which is super important in order to be successful or to drive a project in a successful direction. You need to understand the scope, and scope means what does the client actually want to achieve with the sales implementation. It's not just implementing a sales system in order to have a sales system. It's usually maybe they want to increase their sales, maybe to get more automated, digitalized processes. Maybe they didn't have that before. Maybe they want to reduce the manual work / manual FTEs on the sales department. Maybe they want to have better decision reporting. Maybe they want to manage the escalations within the sales department or within the whole unit or the process. Just giving you some examples. Understand what drives the business, translate it into the technical world. That's where the real success is hidden. Now we're coming to the training, or we call it the training gap in the solution section. Again, got the QR code, the barcode. Feel free to use it. And now we're coming to the sprint. Most programs or projects stop at theory, obviously. Projects demand decision making, they demand accountability. We have, and I'll tell you why we have done that. What we do, we have a 4-week sprint. Obviously, you know what the sprint is. It's a real project simulation based on such real life or use cases that we've showed you before. You're being mentored by practitioners such as Slatko and me. We're going to build a demo system. We're going to give you the blueprints, so the standard approaches that you're ready to rock in the real world. What does that mean? In other words, we're going to show you how we implement sales system, D365 CRM, in a real life project. So it's not about how to technically approach. You can read that, you can learn that, it's part of it. Don't get me wrong, but how do you actually blueprint and use a templated approach that enables you as a consultant or a consultancy to implement a CRM project within a given period of time? And we say it's 30 days. You can also reduce it to 2 weeks. So what we've done in the past, to give you a little bit of more practical experience, we call it door opener packages. So you need to go a couple of steps even back. Let's say you get in touch with a new client, a potential new client, or in the sales we call it lead, and they want to have a CRM implemented. So you have basically 2 ways of doing it. The one way is you take the requirements, you define the requirements with the client, you go into estimation mode, there's new requirements, you re-estimate, you ping pong, sales cycle, endless. So it prolongates, it gets longer, it's longer. At the end, at some point, you're just going to say, okay, we got all requirements. The client, you can estimate on it. You do the project, you're trying to do the big bang. Probably not all requirements are clearly defined. The stakeholders not on board, exactly what we've heard. Very long process, very complicated process. Reduce also has a complexity in the sales, so the pre-sales process. And usually it's more complex to roll this out. It's also very long, that's the point. The other approach is you have a standard approach, meaning you know exactly to your own terms, that's exactly our point, how to implement a standard CRM in the D365 world. And if you think about it, we're talking about standard software. So the standard approach is probably a good way, because every client, it doesn't matter at the beginning if it's in a real estate world, if it's in the sports world, in the insurance world. At the very beginning, they need to have a standard implementation, a standard configuration, no fancy additional developments. And that's what it's all about. It's how we did it in the past, which enabled our companies to grow and scale exactly in that space. Especially when you get in touch with new clients, you need to build trust, you need to build a connection to the client. It's very difficult to stretch that over 3, 6, sometimes even longer, even in CRM projects. So what we did is we simply implemented a standard CRM project, a standard approach for all new clients. Doing that, you can fix price it. Obviously, now I'm going a little bit more commercial. You can fix price it because you're doing the standard approach. It doesn't matter at the beginning how or where, no, not how, where you do it. And within 2 to 4 weeks, you give your client a functioning CRM, more or less out of the box. Who's in the D365 world knows it's not so easy to do out of the box. There's configurations obviously needed. But if you standardize this approach, you have a much higher return on invest towards your client. You build higher trust, quicker connection, and most importantly, you enable the client to use the system, because we all know when the client is actually using the system, a client is usually a lot more, or he's more enabled. It's easier for him to define the requirements, the custom requirements, the additional requirements that might, where it might be necessary to go out of the standard, to have additional customizations or even additional development, especially when you have integrations or migration. So the standard approach enabled us in the past to scale companies because you can use the standard approach for every new client. It's a standard, it's quicker, it's safer, and you get a higher stability within the process. And it opens the door that you can afterwards do this ping pong with requirements and estimation. But the key point is it's in phase 2, not in phase 1. Phase 1 is a standard approach, a standard implementation. Second phase is taking the requirements, then you can do it also in a time and material way, but you're already with one foot through the door, you've implemented a system, so now you can work towards adding the additional requirements, customizations, development. And this is exactly what we're going to do in our sprint. We're going to use our templates, our blueprints, how we standard implemented our CRM projects with hundreds of clients. So you can use this approach, and this approach is not a merely technical approach. It includes all the points that we were talking about before, how we are going to deal with stakeholder, with requirement or scope creep and all that jazz that we heard in the previous slides. We're going to show you in a demo system how that works, how we can implement it on the client side. And that's exactly what you will gain. The goal is, so to say, that you have a day 1 readiness, and within that sprint, within 30 days, you learn everything that you need to learn. You learn about the life cycle clarity, the architectural awareness, also the mindset issues that you're dealing with on the business side, that you feel confident in client situations, where you get a certificate afterwards to work on real D365 projects. But the real key point here is that you have a standard approach that you can use for various clients and not just on a technical level. That's super important, not do this whole complex process. We're going to give you how to build up a system. We have a demo system. You're going to learn how to do it. There's live sessions. We're going to teach you with with Slatko and me, how to actually implement it on a technical and also on a functional level. You can go out, and after the sprint, you're ready to implement, and not just on a technical field, what is a entity and all that stuff that you probably already know. Now, how is the real life project set up in the real world, not on a theoretical world? If you're a company, obviously, might ask, well, what's the return on invest? Pretty easy to answer. You have a faster ramp up phase for the project. Sales cycle is reduced. You definitely reduce mistakes that have a costly effect. You have less rework. You have a more structured process that you can also enable and onboard towards your own consultants. It leads to a better client representation, because one failed analysis phase, for example, costs more than basically just doing it in a 3-day sprint in this case. And so there's a lot of return on invests for the end clients and for your consultancy, if you look at that as well. By the way, this is exactly what enabled us in the past to scale our D365 companies, to have the standard approach, not only in a CRM field. You can have, and we will have these approaches as well, but we're starting with the sales. You can do that for project operations. You can do that for customer insights. You can do that for field service, for customer service. You can even do that on ERP side, FO or FSCM context or BC context. ERP is a little bit more complex because usually the projects are a bit bigger. But that's the whole point of having this sprint. Next step for you guys here, join the sprint. Here is a barcode, and you can schedule a call directly with me. You can ask all questions, all technical stuff, or functional stuff. We can take a look together. If you are interested in doing that, obviously the call is for free, and all you need to do here is scan the QR code and book it via my Calendly, and that's pretty much as easy as it gets. And I just see that the first people have also booked an appointment, which is nice. And that's about it for today. We have 51 minutes on the clock, and it's time for a Q&A. Guys, throw out whatever you have. We're ready to answer it. No questions. Okay, then I'll give you some questions that you might have in your head that we can answer. Do you need project experience? Not necessarily. This sprint is designed for all levels. And the good thing is it's a one-on-one mentoring, meaning that if you are more experienced, we, Zlatko and me, can guide you in the necessary direction. If you have a little bit less experience, no problem. You have more time, you have more hands-on, you have more guidance. So generally speaking, it's for all kind of experiences. You don't necessarily have to have the project experience. You should have, though, some kind of D365 experience. There's a question, Ivana, what habits or skills should consultants build first if they want to accelerate their growth? I'm pretty sure we answered that. Beside the technical skills, communication, requirements engineering, change management to some degree, being able to understand requirements on a business side and translating them into technical requirements. That's probably one of the core skills that answers your question, Ivana. I don't see those questions. Okay, we have a chat and a Q&A. Best thing is if you post them in the Q&A, because I'm looking at the Q&A, but let me jump in the chat as well. Can we have access to the meeting recording? I think if I got €1 for that questions in my hundreds of live sessions, that would be a very good financial aspect for me. Yes, you will have that. We'll send that out. Fill out the form. So we have your email that we can send it to, and everybody who participates can have the access or shall have the access. You mentioned a certificate at the end. What kind of certificate in terms of recognition? Well, obviously it's our own certificate. It's not a Microsoft certificate or whatsoever that you can do with Microsoft directly. It's a project experience. It's a certificate that shows you that you can implement a D365 Sales or CRM system in the real life project context. And that's what we are giving out at the end. It will summarize everything that you have done and learned, that you can, in case if you want to present it, obviously show what you have done or what you are able to do but it's not like a Microsoft certificate that we're not Microsoft itself, that Microsoft does that, if that's the question.
But we don't talk about the certificates only here, right? That's the whole point of this.
Exactly.
What we discussed today, right? We're discussing about gaining more experience, be ready for the first project. Certificates something that comes with it, but the main point is the other.
Exactly. Exactly. Is this project experience only for functional consultants, or is it both for functional and technical consultants? Both for functional and technical consultants. Covers both. Q&A, I see a red mark. How involved should a consultant be in solution design versus relying on the architect? Depends on your role and where you want to be. I would say consultant always should always have the architecture in his or her head. Obviously, there are solution architects that are placed in projects, but if you're looking at this project, at a CRM project on a more higher or global perspective, I would say every consultant, a good consultant, should be involved in the architecture and not just merely on the system design. Hope that answers your question, Voidan. Okay, that question we had with the certificate. How much time we need to allocate for the sprint? It depends. We usually save 5 to 10 hours per week based on how we build it. You can spend more time if you want, but it's not necessary. There's going to be 2 live sessions with us as the coaches during the week. Plus, you get the access to the demo system, and you get the blueprints and the tutorial on how to do it. And that's why we jump in. Obviously, we do that together. But from a time perspective, 5 to 10 hours a week, that's very realistic. Any other questions? Is this one, will customer service and agents to that area be addressed? Customer service, not in this sprint, that will come later. And agents will also be a separate topic, not for the start. AI agents obviously is important, but at this point, we really focus on the standard implementation approach of the CRM itself, not any additional functionalities or requirements. Will be done later. Later, we will have this for project operation, for customer service, field service, as I said, customer insight / marketing, and so on. Same approach then, same approach. I think we covered all questions. Typical questions or a good question could also be, is this only for SMEs or is this also for corporates or like on an enterprise level? SMEs, obviously, it's easier to work on the same level as the client, because in big corporates you have obviously a lot different processes or also guidelines, but it works also there. It's just a different approach when it comes to the client management. But from a technical and a functional perspective, both works. Okay, no more questions. Then we hit the clock perfectly, and all we can do now is say thank you for participating. As usual, it was a great session. Feel free to hand in other questions, additional questions. You have the possibility to do that via the form that you have within the slides, or also book a direct meeting and do it bilaterally. Happy to answer everything about the sprint. The sprint is going to start. The first sprint is going to start in March. We're going to limit this obviously to a certain number. We're happy to have you on board. And happy Friday, happy weekend. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Patrick, for the invitation. And have a nice week.